Little disclaimer before we get started. I know I said I'd do a full map breakdown of Eden, and last Thursday I tried to. However, I had some internet connection issues. The stream was stuttering. I had to take it down and bring it back up, and just overall the result was not what I consider to be YouTube-worthy content. So what I've decided to do is re-record this in something that is more streamlined and focused and a shorter, more digestible video. Today's video is going to focus on what I like to call new meta movement for Eden. And I know I'm using the term new meta kind of loosely here. The game's been out for over 4 years, but basically everything you're going to learn in this video is widely unknown and very useful, to the point that if competitive Halo 5 still existed today, this stuff would be used regularly as part of a new meta. At least that's what I think. Anyway, you're not going to get the full map breakdown, but you will get a collection of some of the best new jumps and techniques to take your gameplay to the next level. Let's get into it. First up, ramp slides. Now, in a recent YouTube video, I've talked about this technique in detail, so I'm not going to go through everything again. You can check the description below for that video, but basically every downward ramp in this game has 2 sweet spots. If you perfectly time a slide over one of these sweet spots, you get a boost forward in your movement speed, and nobody's really taking advantage of this yet, but right here, for example, if you time a slide on this downward ramp and then jump, you can throw yourself forward. This is so useful in so many different areas of this map. So really quickly, I'm going to give you a montage of all the different places you can take advantage of this little slide technique to gain a boost in competitive play. If you can master this timing, the results are so useful. You get such a nice little advantage in movement speed just by timing a slide on a downward ramp, and you don't sacrifice reticle placement as well. If you get really good at this, it doesn't matter which direction you're looking, you can pre-aim specific locations and take fights and move at a high speed at the same time while saving your thrust, which is huge. So try to get creative and think of scenarios where you can use this, and of course you want to use this stuff intelligently at the right time if you want to gain an advantage. But even in a situation like this, like little movements like this can actually help when you're, let's say you fire shots into a guy on the elbow here and he backs down behind red fan. Just being able to time a perfect slide and fly out and potentially chase down that player, assuming of course you pick the right time to do something like this, is just that flexibility that you have over just a small little situation like this. I throw myself out to the elbow for a different angle and I save my thrust at the same time. Just remember, if you slide too early, you'll trip, you'll lose your momentum and just kind of halt in place. If you slide too late, you get a regular slide, so not terrible, but no boost out of that. And if you perfectly time the slide on the sweet spot, you will know. You'll get a launch forward, for example, right here on the cage. Next, we have something called drop slides. I don't think I've officially talked about this technique on YouTube, and I'm probably going to dedicate a whole video to this and a super slide at some point in the future, but I said there were 2 sweet spots on every ramp. The second sweet spot is actually on the lower portion of the ramp, kind of close to down here. If you want to access the lower sweet spot on a ramp, you need to fall on it and land and slide. So you have to move with sprint maintained forward like this, and then land, and the moment you hit the floor, you time a slide. The instant you make contact with that floor to carry that sprint momentum and that fall momentum into an immediate slide on that bottom sweet spot. If you hit it perfectly, you get a nice little boost forward, and depending on where you use it, it's very useful. Here are some examples you can consider. Instead of just trying to line up a slide down this alley, if you're coming from a different angle, like here, for example, and you want to make your way over to camo quickly, you can drop, slide on it, and shoot yourself forward from above, right? So that's the beauty of just having that extra advantage in positioning, knowing that if you can position this perfectly, you get that little boost forward from above an object rather than purposely, being in front of it and trying to line up a sprint slide. If you happen to be here, which you're not going to be here too often, you can sprint and hit the bottom one of the second ramp as well. It does kind of line up pretty well. Once again, it's not really a scenario you're going to see it quite often, but just something to know, you can perfectly land on the lower ramp from that part of the alleyway as well. Something else you can try, and this is super risky, so being able to find the right opportunity to do this is going to be tough, but of course, if you can get up here, and there's a couple ways to get up here, of course, you can go off of that little ledge, you can spring jump as well, it's spring jump height, that'll get you up there. Once you're up here, if nobody is contesting you, nobody's shooting you, or let's say you got a kill, you wiped out opponents, you know, maybe they're going to be on red bend afterwards, you could sprint and slide, launch yourself to red bend from up on top of that ledge. You can do it from both sides as well. Like I said, very risky. I don't know if you're ever going to find an optimal situation to pull this off, but it's cool to just know you can do this. Just sprint out, land, slide, launch yourself to a different area of the map. This might not be the optimal situation to do it, but think about all the other maps in this game and where this technique may apply. Drop sliding is something that I think is perfect for this new meta movement. A couple other quality of life improvements just navigating this area. It can be kind of difficult to get up on that ledge sometimes. What you can do is jump, hold crouch, and clamber this railing from down here. Instead of going up like that, just specifically jump, hold crouch, clamber that, then jump backwards, hold crouch. You land up on this ledge, you get high ground, you get an awkward challenge angle almost for free. It's so easy to do it if you are coming around from this area. So something to think about. Instead of going up, maybe even there's going to be a player in the sneaky, you can skip that, just by getting right above him really quickly by grabbing that ledge with a crouch jump instead. You can also, and this is much riskier, I've talked about this technique before, I call it low clambering. If you are making contact with a very low surfing, like a low railing, just like this, and you double tap and hold clamber or double tap clamber, depending on your settings, you will instantly clamber up on top of it, which is really useful for optimizing very high speed gameplay. We'll talk about the risk associated with this in a second, but doing this is significantly faster than specifically positioning a jump to land on it and then jumping back out. The floaty jump takes way longer than just sprint, slide, grab it, jump up, right? So just knowing that in specific scenarios where you don't expect players to be challenging you and to kill you for free, you can be very quick in getting up to this ledge by sliding until you touch it, low clamber, and then jump up instantly after. So something to keep in mind, but you have to be very aware. You have to know you're not going to be immediately challenged. Maybe your opponents are on respawn, whatever it is. You can use this technique all over the game, so it's something to think about. Something else not many people take advantage of is that this ledge up here is clamberable. You can just jump, clamber up on top of it, and use it for a higher angle challenge on your opponents, whether they're on sneaky or over on the bend, or even to just do a challenge up over the top catwalk. Pretty interesting to know you can use this. You can even just crouch jump on top of it, or sprint, jump, hold crouch, land on it. You don't even need to sprint. Once you land on it, you can wait here. You can do a high angle jump challenge out on the bend. So you have a bit of flexibility with this ledge. Just be aware of the fact that it's there. It's also spring jump height as well. You can spring jump and land directly in, just like that. There you go. Anyway, got a little carried away there. I wouldn't consider this new stuff, more so just quality of life improvements to better and more efficiently navigate this area of the map, which of course is a very important area of the map with a technique that you can apply pretty much anywhere in this game. Next up, we've got the super slide. The original version of the super slide that some of you might remember doesn't actually exist in the game anymore, but this technique is the closest you're going to get to recreating it. Now, we talked about the drop slide, dropping onto a sweet spot and sliding with perfect timing, you launch your Spartan forward. This is the exact same thing, except it's a thrust-powered drop slide. So essentially, you are using the momentum from your thrust into a perfect sweet spot drop slide to fly even farther than you normally would. The better you time the thrust and the better you position that slide, the better the result. The process is to sprint, jump, thrust, reactivate sprint in the air, and time the slide on the sweet spot. Reactivating sprint after you thrust is very important. If you don't do that, it's not going to work properly. So sprint, jump, thrust, reactivate sprint, slide on contact with the floor. The difficulty is the timing of the thrust and the position of that slide. Kind of like that. Not the greatest boost. You can get, a better boost depending on how perfectly you time these mechanics. You can start the thrust, like you can sprint, jump, thrust from here, reactivate sprint, time the slide, and still get a boost, or you can do the perfect version of it, where there's only like a frame between the end of the thrust and the start of the slide. So thrust, slide, like as quickly as possible. If you can perfectly nail that timing, you'll get the best launch. But where should you use it in Eden? Because not only is this one of the most difficult techniques in the game, it leaves you extremely vulnerable. For example, I wouldn't recommend using it on this ramp. I just did that for demonstration. This ramp down here, it's just, you're wasting a lot of time. You're not getting a huge benefit for the launch. This is something I've been experimenting with just for fun. I also don't think this is optimal for competitive play, but sprinting, jumping, and then doing it sideways. Because you can actually jump with sprint, maintain forward, turn in midair, and then thrust and land on it. And what I've been doing to line this up is you can sprint, turn, and use this as a starting line. So you would, let's say you clamber up, sprint, turn, jump, turn, thrust, reactivate sprint, slide. And if you do this perfect with that perfect timing thrust, you get a nice launch into the bend. But when are you going to do this? You're going to get killed for doing this. If you hit a 6 snipe, like clip it, great, but not optimal for competitive play. This scenario, on the other hand, is the only scenario in Eden where I feel like you might be able to use this technique optimally. If you're here and OS is about to come up, you can sprint, jump, thrust, reactivate sprint, slide, and launch yourself over to OS. And that was a slow one. You can do this very quickly if you hit it perfectly, but maybe that could work if somebody isn't, lighting you up as you're jumping across the map. Timing is important. The biggest thing to keep in mind, though, even if Eden doesn't have the greatest examples, is the fact that this technique works on any ramp in the game. You can apply this on other maps. You can apply this on big team maps, on Warzone. It's just something to consider. If you master this, you get a huge launch. On top of all that, Eden is full of unique jumps that are not well known that can give you a competitive advantage. Now, this one I don't think is super useful, but just to, be thorough here, there's a ledge on the wall that you can jump on. If you jump, hold crouch, and land on it, you can jump off it a second time. If you spring jump off this ledge, backwards, you can clamber the catwalk above, just like that. Now, pretty tough jump to land, and whether or not this is useful is going to be very situation specific, but something to consider. I do this backwards with the scoreboard because my technique for spring jumping makes it very difficult to spring jump backwards, but something to think about. There's also a very useful hide spot on this part of the map. Now, Frosty is the first person I saw do this, so shout out to Frosty. You can clamber up on this ledge. You actually don't have to start here. You can clamber up to this one as well. It makes it super easy to start the jump just by clambering up. Then jump, thrust left into the wall, and you'll notice I'm standing on the side of the wall here. Already pretty sick, but if you hold crouch, jump thrust to the left, you get up into this corner, which completely removes your legs from view out of the blue door and gives you angles over to red catwalk, over to the window here, over to top catwalk. If you have a sniper here, this is a pretty nasty spot, and players will walk right underneath you, having no idea that you're here. So very, very useful to consider, something to try adding to your gameplay. Most of us know you can land on the opposite side of this catwalk if you drop and thrust left into the wall here. You can also shimmy your way around the outside of it as well. If you're careful, you can shimmy from top catwalk out to the outside. What a lot of people don't know, though, is the same thing applies to this ledge right here. You can thrust into the ledge and land on the outside of it. This is actually kind of useful. It blocks the angles out from Blue Bend and gives you that isolated angle on Red Nest to pre-nade it if players are challenging up on the stronghold or a variety of situations. From this position, there are a variety of ways to get up to top catwalk, and most of them are well known. You can, jump clamber this, jump backwards, clamber, walk over. From that same ledge, you can, jump directly to the pipe, clamber up that way. You can take the right path, jump from here, maybe sprint jump, grab the pipe like that. If you have pretty consistent movement, you can super jump. You can sprint, thrust, slide, jump, stabilize, match crouch, and clamber and get right up immediately. But something a lot of people don't know is that this wall is also accessible. It's spring jump height, so you can spring jump and then land on it and jump off of it, which is pretty tough to land on. The wall itself is kind of finicky, but there you go. You can jump off of it and then jump, clamber, get up to this catwalk. Something really, really cool, though, is you can also super jump, land on it, and then jump up to the catwalk as well. If you combine your super jump with a spring jump, you can actually go from here directly up to there also, which this is some next level, I'll call it new meta tech. It combines one of the most unique jumps in the game, honestly, combining a super jump into an immediate spring jump off a tiny groove on the wall. Although I'd say it's less useful, this wall is accessible as well. It's also pretty well known that these barrels can be thrusted off of. If you sprint, jump, thrust, you can launch off of the barrel. Remember to hold jump to get a better launch arc. Now, it's difficult to find good optimal use for this, but this one I like a lot. If you're in bottom mid, you can jump, thrust, launch off the side of it and get up to red nest very consistently. It's actually not very hard to pull off, and I recommend you try that to get up to red nest. A lot of people know how to navigate this area pretty well. You can jump, clamber this ledge, and then jump backwards, clamber the window above. You can, jump, hold, crouch precisely and get over without a clamber. However, something that a lot of people don't know is jumping and stabilizing will get you up here from that ledge, which can be pretty useful for very quickly changing lanes, maybe taking an angle over to top catwalk, or just juking out an opponent. You can also get up to red nest by spring thrusting off of this little ledge on the wall, and then stabilize, clamber, you'll get up to the bridge here. Now, you can do it both ways. You can spring thrust off the other side, which this one's harder to do from this side, but spring jump thrust, even a regular jump thrust if you're like perfect. Now, we've just about covered everything I want to show, but this next one is one of my favorites. Now, I've shown previously that from this ledge, you can spring thrust and land on this tarp. And once you're up on this tarp, of course, you can stay up here as long as you want until you get shot at. You can shimmy pretty far out before the ledge starts to naturally push you off. So right here, the ledge will push you off. Now, the thing is, to land a spring thrust from this position, it's hard to find the timing to do that. But it turns out spring thrusting isn't the only way to get up there. You can get up there with a regular jump thrust into a stabilize and then hold crouch. So jump thrust, stabilize, hold crouch. The beauty of it is you can do it backwards. All you have to do is clamber this ledge. The instant you clamber this ledge, jump thrust backwards, stabilize, hold crouch, and you'll land up on the ledge above. It's honestly beautiful. Just sprint, slide, clamber, jump thrust backwards, stabilize, and you have to kind of like properly position that stabilize jump, but stabilize, hold crouch, you land up on this ledge super quickly, super conveniently, right out of a clamber on the side there. So you can do it way more quickly, and you can do it with your reticle placed to important areas and take fights at the same time. You can shoot the entire time that you do this, which is honestly like really damn cool, and I highly recommend you guys give this a try. And that's everything I got for today's new meta movement. Just a collection of jumps and strategies that you can apply in your gameplay that not many people are using currently that may give you an advantage in competitive play. Now, before we go, I'm going to leave you with, I'll call it a challenge jump. This is something that I would say is never optimal in competitive play. It's also very, very challenging to do. But it's cool just to know that you can do it. So I'm going to give this a try here. But what you have to do is sprint, slide, spring jump off this pipe. You can get outside the map. Sprint, slide jump, spring jump, stabilize, mash crouch, thrust. Thrust a second time because you have infinite thrust. All right, I kind of cheated a little bit. You can do this with one thrust. I'd like to see somebody give it a shot, though. Oh, you die out here. You can't escape once you're up here. You can try to go back out the sides, but once you're up there, you got 10 seconds and you die, so kind of useless. What the heck did I do? This is what happens when you try to go for jumps outside the map. You literally break the game. Oh, it disappeared.